Welcome to another deep dive. We're going to tackle this intensely personal story you shared, and it really got me thinking about, this age-old question: what does it mean to choose life?
Yeah.
You know, and the source material really tackles that question head-on, weaving in personal experiences with spiritual reflections, even bringing in some thought-provoking biblical teachings along the way.
It's fascinating how the source
Yeah,
uses this one life story to explore such a profound concept.
right.
I mean, it's not just a memoir, but it's almost like a roadmap for navigating the choices we all face and how those choices, big or small, shape who we become.
Exactly. And it starts by, defining choice itself.
Mhm.
It's not simply about picking between options, but actively selecting what we prefer. That already suggests a level of responsibility, doesn't it? Like
Mhm.
we're not just passive bystanders in our own lives. And then it brings in Deuteronomy 30.1, where it talks about choosing life or death, blessings or curses, and it's all in our hands. It's powerful imagery, isn't it? I mean, it takes us right back to the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve's fateful choice. The source uses that story to remind us that this struggle with temptation and its consequences is as old as humanity itself.
Right.
It's something we all grapple with, even today.
Yeah, and the source argues that the consequences are very real. It even mentions this mind-blowing statistic that the average person makes around 35,000 choices
Yeah.
every single day.
Wow.
Think about that for a second. It's easy to feel overwhelmed, right?
Absolutely. But maybe instead of getting paralyzed by choice overload, that number should inspire us to be more mindful. What if, instead of trying to control every single decision, we focused our energy on the ones that truly matter, the ones that align with that idea of choosing life? Right. That's such a great point. It's about being intentional, isn't it? Not letting life just happen to us, but actively shaping it through the choices we make. And speaking of shaping our choices, the source introduces these two incredible figures, Big Mama and Little Mama, the author's grandmothers. And I was struck by how different they were. Their lifestyles, their spiritualities, it's like they represent two completely different paths.
It's a brilliant way to illustrate how different influences can shape our understanding of right and wrong.
Mm.
And having these contrasting figures in the author's life adds this layer of complexity, making the idea of choosing life even more challenging.
I wonder if having those contrasting examples actually makes it harder to find your own path. Like, do you constantly question which way is right?
That's a great question. It's
Right.
like the source is showing us that there isn't always one clear answer. What might look like a good choice to one person could have unintended consequences for another. It's about understanding the nuances, weighing the different factors, and ultimately trusting your own inner compass.
Like, for example, there's this scene where Big Mama is, silently disapproving of the children dancing. It made a huge impact on the author, even though Big Mama never said a word.
Wow.
It's like those unspoken expectations can carry so much weight.
Right. And then you have Big Mama's lesson about respecting property,
Mm.
teaching the golden rule through that simple act of not stepping on the neighbor's lawn. Such a powerful image, instilling values through everyday actions, showing respect for the work and effort of others.
And then there's Little Mama, battling alcoholism, but still offering these moments of warmth and wisdom. She's such a complex character. You see the struggle, the pain, but also the love that shines through.
And that's what makes the source so compelling, right? It doesn't shy away from the messy realities of life. Little Mama reminds us that even well-intentioned people can make choices that lead to negative consequences, both for themselves and those around them.
It makes you think about the generational impact of choices, doesn't it? How patterns can repeat themselves, but also how we have the power to break free from those cycles and create something new.
Absolutely. And this brings us to another key moment in the source material, the story of the stolen plum. It's such a relatable story, isn't it?
Oh, for sure.
We've all given in to temptation
Oh.
at some point, haven't we?
Oh, yeah.
And then felt the weight of that choice long after the act itself.
Oh, yeah. I remember this one time. Well, let's just say it involved cookies
Yeah.
and my sister's secret stash. The guilt was real. But back to this story. The way the source describes the buildup of desire, the act itself, and then years of lingering guilt, it's so vividly written. It's like you're right there, experiencing it with the author.
What's interesting is how the source uses that simple story to explore some deeper truths. It's not just about a stolen plum. It's about the nature of temptation and the inner battle between good and evil that we all face. It's about recognizing the power our desires have over us and the importance of taking responsibility for our actions, even when it's difficult.
Right, and the power of confession and forgiveness. The source talks about carrying that guilt for decades before finally finding release through confessing and seeking forgiveness. It's such a powerful reminder that we don't have to carry those burdens alone.
You know, it's like the source is
Yeah.
bringing those biblical teachings to life, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like when Paul talks about the struggle with sin dwelling within us in Romans 7. We all have that capacity
Yeah.
for making bad choices. But we don't have to be ruled by it.
Mhm.
We can choose a different path. And just like in 1 Corinthians, where it talks about God always providing a way out of temptation, that forgiveness offers a way to break free from those cycles of guilt and shame.
Okay, so we've got choice, consequences, temptation, forgiveness. I'm seeing a pattern here. It's like the source is building a framework for understanding how to actually choose life.
Exactly. And that framework is about to get even more complex as we move into the next section, where the source tackles the difficult topic
Yeah.
of addiction, particularly through Little Mama's struggle with alcoholism.
Oh, yeah. That's where things get really real. It's not just about abstract concepts anymore. It's about how these choices play out in someone's life
Yeah.
and the ripple effects they have on everyone around them.
It's a sensitive topic
Yeah.
for sure. And one the source handles with such grace. You know, there's no judgment, only compassion. For Little Mama and her struggles, it paints a very real picture of how addiction can take hold, even when someone knows it's harmful.
Right. And the source doesn't sugarcoat the pain and complexity of addiction either. It really digs into the emotional and spiritual aspects, suggesting that there's often something deeper driving the behavior.
The source uses the phrase spiritual and emotional bondage. And that really struck me. You know, it's like addiction becomes this force that holds you captive, preventing you from fully embracing life.
There's this moment where little mama keeps saying, "Ahapati." On the surface, it's almost funny. But when you read between the lines, you sense this underlying frustration, this disconnect she's trying to numb with alcohol.
It's a poignant reminder that addiction isn't just a physical dependence. It's often a symptom of deeper wounds, of unmet needs, of a longing for something more.
Right. And the source makes it clear that willpower alone isn't enough. Little mama knew alcohol was damaging her health, but she couldn't just stop. You know, it speaks volumes about the power of addiction and how recognizing the problem and seeking help is absolutely crucial.
You can't break free from those chains if you don't even acknowledge they're there. That first step of admitting you have a problem can be the hardest, but it's the foundation for everything that comes after.
Right. And that's where faith and prayer come in, right? The source really emphasizes the power of turning to a higher power for strength and guidance, especially when facing something as overwhelming as addiction.
It's not about shaming anyone into changing their behavior. It's about offering hope, reminding them that they're not alone in this struggle and that there's a possibility of healing and freedom.
It's about choosing a different path, even when that path seems impossibly difficult.
And the source doesn't just talk the talk. It offers some really practical advice as well. It talks about the importance of guarding our minds, being intentional about the thoughts we allow in, and how that can help us resist temptation. Just like the Bible says, we need to gird up the loins of our mind.
What a great metaphor. It's like putting on armor for a spiritual battle. You're actively choosing to protect yourself, to strengthen your defenses against those negative thoughts and urges.
Exactly. It highlights the fact that overcoming addiction requires a conscious effort, a willingness to fight for your well-being. But it also reminds us that we're not fighting alone. Just like King Jehoshaphat facing that massive army in the Bible. You know, the battle ultimately belongs to God.
But just like God told Jehoshaphat, to still show up on the battlefield, we still have to take action. We have to choose to engage in the fight for our own freedom. It's not passive. It's an active choice we make every single day.
And that action might look different for everyone. It could be seeking therapy, joining a support group, finding medical intervention, or diving deeper into faith and prayer. The source encourages us to find what works for us and to take that first step, no matter how scary it feels.
It's about reclaiming that power of choice, right? Even when it feels like addiction has taken over, there's still that spark within us that can choose to reach out, to seek help, to fight for a better life.
And the source is unwavering in its message. Freedom is possible. It might be a long and challenging journey, but it's a journey worth taking. And, you know, for me, one of the most powerful takeaways is that we can't find deliverance from a problem unless we admit we have one in the first place.
It's like what we were talking about earlier with confession. It's not just about admitting wrongdoing, but it's about being honest with ourselves, about the areas where we need help and being open to change.
It's about shining a light on those hidden struggles, those unconfessed sins, whether it's addiction or something else entirely. It's about recognizing that those things can create a barrier between us and a fulfilling life.
The Source encourages us to bring those things into the light, to seek forgiveness and healing, to let go of the shame, and embrace the possibility of a fresh start.
And, this isn't just about individual transformation. It's about breaking free from generational patterns as well. Think about Little Mama and how much she wanted a better life for her granddaughter.
Yes, she saw the consequences of her own choices and desperately wanted something different for the next generation. It's like she understood that breaking free from addiction wasn't just about her own well-being, but about creating a more hopeful future for the people she loved.
It's a powerful legacy to leave behind. Not just freedom from a particular struggle, but the inspiration to choose differently, to choose life, to choose a path that leads to blessings and a future filled with hope.
It brings us back to that central message of the Source, the power of choice, to shape not only our own lives, but the lives of those around us, and even generations to come. That's a lot of responsibility, but it's also incredibly empowering, don't you think?
It is. It reminds us that even our seemingly small choices carry weight and have the potential to create a ripple effect. That extends far beyond ourselves. But it also reminds us that we're not powerless. We can choose to make a difference.
So thinking about your own life, what choices are you facing right now? Are they leading you towards that path of life the Source talks about?
It's a question we should all be asking ourselves regularly. What are we prioritizing? What seeds are we sowing? And are those choices leading to growth, to flourishing, to a sense of purpose and fulfillment?
Because that's what choosing life really looks like, isn't it? It's not about avoiding hardship altogether. The Source makes that very clear. It's about finding the strength and resilience to weather those inevitable storms and come out stronger on the other side.
It's about trusting that even when we make mistakes, even when we fall short, we can always choose again. We could always turn back towards the light and find that path that leads to healing, to growth, to a life that truly reflects our deepest values.
Beautifully said. This has been another deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
The Source uses this beautiful imagery of being like a tree planted by rivers of water, bearing fruit in its season. That's what choosing life can look like. It's about growth and flourishing, about reaching your full potential, even amidst challenges.
And it's not about pretending those challenges don't exist, is it? The Source talks about storms coming our way. But when those storms hit, there's a sense of security, knowing there's shelter, that we're not alone in weathering them.
It's about tapping into that inner strength, that resilience to face whatever comes your way. It's about remembering that. Even in the midst of difficulty, there's a source of strength you can draw on.
And that brings us back to that fundamental choice presented in the Source. It's about deciding whether you're going to walk in the counsel of the ungodly or delight in the law of the Lord. It's like choosing which path you're going to walk down.
It's a choice between being like chaff, blown away by the wind, or being deeply rooted, standing firm even when the winds of change and challenge blow your way. It's about building your life on a foundation that can withstand those storms.
What I find so encouraging is that the Source doesn't present this as a one-time choice. Like, once you've made your decision, that's it. Instead, it emphasizes that God's mercies are new every morning. It's like getting a fresh start, a new opportunity to choose again, even if you've stumbled along the way.
It's about embracing that grace and forgiveness, allowing it to transform you from the inside out. It's about putting on those new clothes of righteousness, shedding the old patterns, and choosing to walk in a new way.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought-provoking question that really resonated with me. The Source talks about choosing between the path of life and worthless chaff. What does that metaphor mean to you?
It's a powerful image, isn't it? It challenges us to examine our choices, to ask ourselves, am I investing my time and energy in things that truly matter? Am I building something lasting and meaningful? Or am I scattering my efforts on things that will ultimately blow away, like chaff in the wind?
This deep dive has been about so much more than just one person's story. It's given us a framework for understanding the choices we all face, the consequences that ripple outward, and the possibility of redemption and transformation.
It's been a journey of exploring what it means to truly choose life in all its complexities, challenges, and ultimately, its profound beauty.
So keep exploring these themes, reflect on the stories and insights we've shared today, and most importantly, keep making those choices that lead you closer to that fulfilling, abundant life that's waiting for you. This has been another deep dive. Thanks for joining us.